是什么？
Soldiers, scientists, adventurers, oddities.
This hero dimension lies within the
Overwatch.
zone.
Greetings.
Ever wonder about the limits of video games?
What we do here is go back.
Games have exponentially advanced over the past 50 years, and so have their capabilities. From one of the first games like Pong in 1972, and roughly 40 years later, Minecraft releases an item called Redstone, allowing people to eventually simulate things such as computer logic, and more recently, people have simulated the game itself of Minecraft using a computer built within Minecraft. So it got me wondering about other possibilities within any game, like my absolute favorite game, Overwatch. It's mind-boggling that people have spent time creating such masterpieces, and I'm certainly far from creating anything like Minecraft within Minecraft, but wanted to show off my recent project of simulating a Rubik's Cube within the game of Overwatch, and sharing some insight into the path towards finding my probably horrific but working solution. So here's my current working version in all of its beauty. It ended up looking pretty badass if I say so myself, which I will, because you know I made it. Anyway, in game, I tried to provide some information on how this all works by pressing the key map for secondary fire. I wanted this virtual cube to still have some FPS elements so you can fly around with the character of Mercy. And to execute a move, just find the enemy bot with the corresponding Rubik's Cube notation and shoot them. This triggers a move to rotate the virtual cube. Now that looks awesome. I couldn't quite decide on the best layout for each bot, so they all randomly float in front of where you spawn in, which does the job. To scramble up the cube for you to then solve, press the key map for reloading and watch it go. With a physical cube, I am quite slow and average around 50 seconds, but have always been fascinated by such a seemingly simple puzzle. Back in game with this virtual cube, it's quite different to think about, as having almost no muscle memory to help with solving. And if you want to try it out for yourself in Overwatch, which is now free, this custom game mode has the code PSA99. And as future iterations happen, we'll update with this code. All info below in the description. This was all possible as there is a programmable workshop mode within the game of Overwatch. And although this may not be the most technical achievement, I had a lot of fun creating what I envisioned for a working virtual Rubik's Cube in a game. This ended up taking me countless hours, resulting in 2 complete working versions, over 3,000 lines of the workshop code, and over at least 1,957 lines of completely rotten and utterly trash spaghetti Python code that I additionally wrote.
My spaghetti!
Anyhow, more on all that code later. First, what even is the Overwatch Workshop? The workshop is quite an impressive and creative tool that allows players to make their own pretty awesome, or dumb, custom modes within Overwatch, which is usually a PvP game where you play through the perspective of one character and can shoot at your enemies, or heal your teammates, or block incoming damage, or even use some other cool abilities and mechanics. The workshop allows for ideas going beyond these underlying mechanics, and so I wanted to see what is possible within the workshop, starting with a Rubik's Cube simulation. One awesome feature about the workshop is that you can share a code allowing other people to import said code to play it, or even modify and implement their own ideas based on your own creation. For example, here are a couple pretty cool game modes people have made that almost completely disregards the game's shooting mechanics. One being a game mode where you have to try and dodge a deadly Thomas the Tank Engine, or play as Thomas, who charges at light speed, who is also crudely made of light spheres and other effects. I find this mode to be some artistic genius with the limited creation tools, along with being a pretty stupid game to play with some friends. Another one I was inspired by was a guessing the sketch game that used your cursor to select different colors, styles, or size for you to draw out sketches for other people to guess. As you saw in my silly intro, I tried to draw my little bony guy here with his smug attitude and having this look.
He's just standing there, menacingly.
This was actually more work than it looked, as I had to comb through all the workshop code myself and make some edits to the width and height of the draw area to better fit my abysmal sketch. Shout out to all these creators, and these workshop codes will be linked in the description below. It's pretty inspiring that people spent the time figuring out and completing these kinds of creations within this Overwatch universe. And anyone else who's made something within any game using what is provided is genuinely incredible and intrigued me enough recently that I just had to try it myself. This was a prolonged journey towards creating a Rubik's Cube using the workshop. I want to walk through how it all works and what capabilities I found along the way. Starting with the basics, this is what the workshop interface looks like, being fairly simple with a few buttons up here to add, copy, paste, or toggle any selected code on or off. In a block of code, called a rule, there are actions, and there can be a condition, which when met, will run the actions stated in this rule. An action here can be referred to as a statement, which is a common term for one line of code to be executed. Trying to manage over hundreds of these statements with a mouse is where it strays away from a comfortable interface. So to make this experience much easier to manage, you can actually copy one or more actions or rules, which can then be pasted into a simple text file to be modified. This is much more suitable for my own coding style, which really sped up and eased the process. Looking at some simple actions now, one large step I had to tackle was how to design and display the cube. There's limited resources, so a simple cube cannot actually be created, as there are only a few effects or beam effects that can be created, like these spheres, orbs, beams, or more. Looking back at this first version I created disgusts me now, but is what I dealt with at the time. It's a smaller cube of a 2x2x2 that's this weird floating looking shape of different colored orbs. This kind of resembled what I wanted, having the 6 faces with 6 colors, also replacing the usual yellow face with black, and even later replacing the orange face with purple to hopefully help with visibility. Now with something that resembled a cube, that was good enough for me to tackle, well, the whole rest of it, being figuring out all the logic to correctly move each of the faces corresponding to a Rubik's Cube move notation. When creating an orb effect like this, it takes a vector position based on the map world coordinates, so this here is a vector position of 0 in the x, 10 in the y, and 0 in the z. Thus, my first attempt was to modify these vectors to their next location based on whichever move was executed. Let's take a quick look at a real 3x3x3 Rubik's Cube, or 3x3 for short. These move notations is what I was trying to recreate. If you still have never picked up a cube to mess around with, now is a great time to try it out. It can actually be a really cool, fun little puzzle to play around with. In total, there are technically 54 possible moves with a physical cube, but to keep it simple for now, I only implemented around 12 of them, being these face turns in both the clockwise direction and counterclockwise or prime or inverse directions. I may expand on this and implement more moves in the future, but for now this works great as is. Taking a closer look, here is the cube mapped out in numbered squares on a flat surface, showing how each of the positions gets changed during this clockwise right turn. So if the red face is on the right side, doing a right turn rotates the red face along with the attached faces of white, green, yellow, and blue. So when doing a calculation for one turn, there are the 9 red squares, 3 white, 3 green, 3 yellow, and 3 blue squares to also deal with, making sure they all align and end up in the correct position. Looking even closer, the position of 3 rotates to the position where 43 was, and position 21 rotates to the position where 3 was. So there is a lot to manage, and at this scale each move requires 21 positions to deal with. When dealing on a smaller scale of a 2x2, there is only a total of 12. 4 squares for the right face, and 2 squares for all the other faces. So much better to understand and tackle first, and thus I did, trying to get all 12 of these effects to move around correctly, which surprisingly turned out to be straightforward. Or so I thought. After programming the right turn to move with ease and quickly moved on to the next, being a front turn, this is where issues quickly arose. I don't have any footage of this issue in game, so I made this animation for the general essence of the issue I encountered. This can mimic a face and its positions, and so an orb can be created at this front 1 position of 0x, 10y, and 0z, and rotating clockwise will move to the front 2 at 3x, 10y, 0z. So moving 3 units on the x-axis. That's pretty easy. For this move I can just add 3 units in the x to go from 0 to 3. But the orb related to the front 1 position is now at front 2 position of 3x, 10y, 0z, becoming a problem. Looking at all 4 front positions, now when the same clockwise move is applied again, the orb still thinks it is in the front 1 position, and so would add another 3 to the x value just like before, instead of moving clockwise towards the front 3 position of 3x, 5y, 0z, thus moving completely incorrectly. When correct, all orbs should continuously move clockwise, so my inherent problem lies within how I originally created and rotated the orb's positions. In essence, any move always correlates to the same vector positions, like a right turn will always move the same 21 positions, but not necessarily the same orbs or effects. So after literally circling ideas around in my brain, always ending back at the same problem, one night I finally had a crazy bloated solution to try and fix the issue of all these positions. I did manage to figure this out for the smaller 2x2, but for now I'm going back to quickly talk about my 3x3 design, and then we'll continue explaining how I got all the logic to work from there. I really wanted this to look more accurate, so started messing around with these light beams, and finally realized I can actually connect 4 of them to make a square. And now that looks pretty damn cool. One light beam requires a starting and ending point, so a square actually uses 8 vectors total, but only 4 unique vectors, as the corners are shared. So now using 4 of these beams actually octupled, that's 8 times, the amount of positions I need to deal with when making just one move. Dealing with this many values, with 6 faces, 9 squares on a face, and 4 unique vectors for one square, all calculated up to, let me put on my face cam and pull up a calculator real quick. $216, a whopping 216 unique values for me to correctly manage, and 84 values for just one single move. Oh boy, I was in for a wild ride. Now with this extremely bloated method figured out and working correctly for my 2x2 design, along with my newly awesome design 3x3, it was time to combine everything I had learned up to this point and finish up this project. I got to work on my wacky method of needing one thing to hold all 216 constant vector locations, and needing another separate thing to hold all 216 actual positions of the effects themselves. Usually when thinking about 3D space, a mathematical matrix can be utilized, but to me, a matrix is just the name for a great series of movies. In reality, I was just unsure of how to implement this concept within the workshop. What I was very sure of that was possible within the workshop was using a similar concept called arrays, and more importantly, multi-dimensional arrays. So let me further explain arrays with another lovely animation. An array is usually depicted as boxes like these, where certain sizes of data can be stored within each box. To be able to access the data, you have to start at the beginning and kind of count your way up to the box of data that you want. This is just a single dimension array having 1 row of boxes. And this is what a 2-dimensional array looks like, having 2 rows of boxes. Here's another way to show arrays by using actual boxes and colored cubes. So this box here can hold a certain amount of these size cubes, being just 2. And to be able to access the blue cube data, first you have to open the box, and counting from the start, the blue cube is the second cube from the start, so it can be expressed in notation like up top, with a name and these square brackets with the index of 2 representing this blue cube. Now for a 2-dimensional, or 2D array, it would be more like a giant box holding smaller boxes inside, which these smaller boxes have cubes inside of them. This giant box has 4 smaller boxes, and each smaller box has their own 2 colored cubes in them. This closely resembles a simple 2D array, where to now access this green cube, you have to first open the giant box, and then count up to the 4th smaller box, open up this box, and then again count up until the second cube. This can be expressed in notation like this, with a pair of square brackets, and the first index being the smaller box, and second index being the green cube we want. Furthermore, the colored cubes in these arrays can actually represent the vector data that I actually used in my arrays. With graphics, a color can really just be defined by 3 red, green, blue values from 0 to 255. For instance, the color red will have 255 in red, and 0 in green, and 0 in blue. And this green cube we want next has the value of 0 red, 255 in green, and 0 in blue. These are also a trio of numbers exactly like the vectors having a trio of x, y, and z coordinate values. Like with all numbers, math can be applied here, so if I wanted my red cube to change from red to green, looking at these values, I want to subtract 255 from red, add 255 to green, and then leave blue at 0. This is exactly what I coded with my arrays, but replacing this idea of colored cubes in boxes with an array of vectors. I hope this showed what an array is, and what multi-dimensional arrays are, and how I stored and manipulated data within all these arrays. Programming these arrays in Python was much better than dealing with arrays within the workshop, allowing me to have a better handle on all the data in my multiple multi-dimensional arrays. Geez, tried to count how many times I've said arrays like arrays. Arrays.
A-R-R-A-Y-S. Arrays. Is it even a word anymore? It's completely losing all meaning. Arrays.
What even is an array?
Yo, can you shut up and finish editing this fucking video? That bit wasn't even funny. It's past 4 a.m. again, and you need to catch up in your class that you've been neglecting.
Oh, yeah, I'm right, I'm sorry. Wait, but if I'm editing this video now, then who the fuck are you? Anyway, back to before. With fully understanding how to hold all my data with 2 separate arrays, I started cracking away at writing some Python code. Then my mind got way out of hand, and I decided to additionally write code to also completely generate all the workshop code needed for creating the effects of the cube and for each of the rotational moves. I figured this would not be too hard to program all in Python, allowing me to change, debug, or fix any issues way more easily. And so this is where I decided to hide away in a dark basement, cooking up my rancid spaghetti, as I had to hide from all the Italians about to hunt me for this atrocity I was about to commit.
Mamma mia!
For all you nerds, random nerd shit. Here's a whiteboard, here's a whiteboard, here's some code, here's another whiteboard, here's some code, here's another whiteboard, here's another whiteboard, more code, whiteboard, code. Anyway, to finish up, I completely went overboard with all this code as I had 2 files implementing the 6 arrays for vector data, calculations for all 216 vectors, and their rotational moves. This would generate all the text for every single rule or action with all the correct data. All this unreasonably large logic completely fixed all my previous issues, and so, finally, all this time, effort, neglect of other life aspects, and writing on whiteboards, trying out multiple methods, weeping under my desk in the corner, all paid off, and my logic, all the crap, actually worked. The end was near, and I just had to finish grinding and double-checking all my Python code. Once I was done, I hit run, watched it all generate, copied and pasted every rule and action into the workshop, made any last adjustments to my other rules, and clicked Start Game. And there it is, I'm fucking done. I saw my gorgeous creation come to life, working completely and even more beautifully than I originally imagined almost 2 months ago. Anyway, this was my working virtual cube that you can all go try out yourselves right now. I really hope you enjoyed watching this long video as much as I enjoyed spending infinitely more time completely over editing this. I can't wait to start on my next project and see where I can take the limits of Overwatch. That will probably be sometime within the next decade. So, thanks so much for watching, and have fun cubing.